Right now, while you're sipping your Glenfiddich or reaching for that same bottle of Maker's Mark you've bought 6 times in a row, distillers in India, Taiwan, Finland, and even Wales are making whiskies that are winning blind tastings against the most legendary Scottish distilleries on the planet. Most people have absolutely no idea they exist. Today we are going around the world to uncover 15 whiskies from countries you would never associate with whiskey. Bottles that are not just surprisingly good for where they come from, they are flat out better than what is sitting on your shelf right now. Some of these have won World Whiskies Awards. Some have embarrassed Scotch at international competitions. A couple of them are so under the radar that by the time the whiskey world catches on, the prices will double. Stick around to the end, because number 1 on this list is a bottle that shocked the entire spirits industry, and you can still get it for under $100. Let's get into it. Number 15, Langertun Old Dear Classic from Switzerland. When you think of Switzerland, you think watches, chocolate, and banking. Nobody thinks whiskey, but maybe they should. Langertun Distillery sits in the Emmental region, yes, the same place the cheese comes from, and they have been quietly producing some of the most elegant whiskies in Europe. The Old Dear Classic is matured in a combination of Chardonnay and red wine casks sourced from local Swiss vineyards. And the result is a whiskey that feels unmistakably Swiss, precise, refined, and meticulously crafted. On the nose, you get cherry compote and white chocolate. The palate delivers toasted almond, stone fruit, and a creamy vanilla that lingers into a clean, balanced finish. This is a whiskey that does not scream for your attention. It earns it through sheer quality. It is not cheap. Swiss production costs mean you will pay a premium, but for a single malt this polished, it is worth every franc. Number 14, St. Kilian's Signature Edition Single Malt from Germany. Germany is home to one of the largest whiskey distilleries outside of Scotland and the United States. St. Kilian in Rudenau, Bavaria has the capacity and ambition to compete with established Scottish names, and their signature edition proves they have the liquid to back it up. This is a well-balanced malt with notes of vanilla, stone fruit, and a gentle spice from European oak. It's clean and precise, unmistakably German in its attention to detail. There is no rough edge, no off-note, just confident craftsmanship from start to finish. The German whiskey scene is growing fast, and St. Kilian is leading the charge. If you can find a bottle outside of Europe, grab it. Number 13. Cardrona Growing Barley, Single Malt from New Zealand. Nestled in the Southern Alps between Queenstown and Wanaka, the Cardrona distillery sits at an elevation that would make most Scottish distilleries jealous. The extreme temperature swings between summer and winter create wild maturation conditions. The spirit expands and contracts in the cask aggressively, pulling out flavours at an accelerated rate. Their Growing Barley. Single malt is distilled from New Zealand-grown barley, aged in a combination of ex-bourbon and ex-sherry casks, and bottled without chill filtration. The nose hits you with honey and orchard fruits, ripe pear and green apple, followed by a palette of malt biscuits, vanilla cream, and gentle baking spices. The finish is medium long with a pleasant grassiness that feels uniquely New Zealand. This is a whiskey that does not need to shout. It is confident, balanced, and incredibly easy to drink. The kind of bottle where you pour 1 glass just to try it, and suddenly half the bottle is gone. Number 12, Thompson Manuka Smoke Single Malt from New Zealand. Here is where things get really interesting. Instead of using peat to smoke their barley, the way Scottish distilleries have done for centuries, Thompson uses Manuka wood. That is the same tree that produces Manuka honey, and it creates a smoke character that is completely unlike anything in Scotland. The smoke is sweeter, more aromatic, more complex. It wraps around flavours of honey, dried herbs, and toasted grain in a way that feels entirely new. If Islay is a campfire on a rainy moor, this is a bonfire on a warm New Zealand hillside. The finish is long, gently smoky, and lingers with a sweetness that keeps pulling you back for another sip. If you love peated whiskey but want something genuinely different, something that does not exist anywhere else in the world, Thompson Manuka Smoke is your bottle. Number 11. Warringham Armoric Double Maturation from France. France is the largest consumer of whiskey in the world per capita. The French don't just love whiskey, they are absolutely obsessed with it. So it was only a matter of time before they started making their own. Warringham Distillery in Brittany began producing whiskey in the late 1980s, making them the original pioneers of French whiskey. Their first single malt, Armoric, launched in 1998 and quickly became the driving force of the entire French whiskey movement. The Armoric double maturation is aged first in Breton oak casks, then finished in Oloroso sherry casks, and the combination is genuinely special. On the nose, you get maritime salinity mixed with honey and dried apricots. The palate delivers marzipan, baked apple, subtle coastal character, and a briny mineral quality that reflects the Breton seaside climate. The finish is medium length with a pleasant warmth and lingering stone fruit. What makes this whiskey fascinating is how distinctly French it feels. The oak character from local Breton wood is different from American or Scottish casks. It occupies its own lane, and once you taste it, you understand why France now has over 130 operating whiskey distilleries. Number 10. Kero Malt Rye Whiskey from Finland. Most people hear Finland and think saunas, heavy metal, and maybe reindeer. Nobody, and I mean nobody, thinks whiskey. But here is the thing, Finland grows some of the finest rye grain in the world. The harsh Nordic climate forces the grain to develop slowly, building layers of flavour that warmer climate rye simply cannot match. Kero Distillery was literally founded after 5 friends sat in a sauna, drank rye whiskey, and asked themselves, why isn't Finland making this? So they built a distillery in a disused old dairy in Isokiro, a small village in western Finland, and started distilling whole grain rye. The result? A whiskey that hits you with dark bread, white pepper, and a creamy sweetness that feels like buttered rye toast. There is a gentle spice on the finish that lingers without burning. It does not taste like it is trying to be Scotch. It tastes like Finland in a glass. Kero Malt scored a gold outstanding with 98 out of 100 points at the International Wine and Spirit Competition, and in rye whiskey circles, this bottle is quickly becoming a cult favourite. At around 50 to 60 euros, it is a steal for what you are getting. Number 9. The Lakes Whisky Makers Reserve from England. England has been making gin for centuries, beer, obviously, but whiskey, that is supposed to be Scotland's territory. The Lakes Distillery did not get the memo. Located in the Lake District, one of the most stunning landscapes in all of England, this distillery brought in Daval Gandhi as their whiskey maker. Gandhi came from the Macallan, where he had become an expert on sherry cask maturation and blending. At the Lakes, he was given complete creative freedom to oversee every stage of production, from grain to glass, something almost unheard of at larger distilleries. The Whiskey Makers Reserve is a single malt matured in a combination of sherry-seasoned casks, PX, Oloroso, and red wine barriques, with 80 to 90% of the spirit going into sherry wood. That ratio alone sets it apart from most distilleries. The result is a whiskey that is rich, fruity, and almost dessert-like without being cloying. Expect dark chocolate, plum pudding, candied orange, and a warm spice that builds slowly across the palate. The finish is long, with lingering dried fruit and a touch of oak tannin that keeps everything grounded. This bottle has won multiple gold medals and has been praised by critics who admit they never expected England to produce something this refined. If you are a sherry bomb lover who is tired of paying premium prices for Macallan, this is your new go-to. Number 8. Baines Cape Mountain Single Grain from South Africa. Here is a bottle that quietly did something no South African whiskey had ever done before. It won the World's Best Grain Whiskey Award at the World Whiskies Awards. Not once, but twice. In 2013 and again in 2018. Not Best African Whiskey, not best for the price. This was the best in the world. Baines Cape Mountain is produced by the James Sedgwick Distillery in Wellington, South Africa, the only commercial whiskey distillery on the entire African continent. They use 100% local South African yellow maize. They double mature the spirit over 5 years in ex-bourbon casks in the warm South African climate, which accelerates the aging process dramatically. What that means for you is a whiskey that tastes significantly older than it actually is. You get rich toffee, vanilla custard, toasted oak, and a finish that has this gorgeous dried fruit sweetness, almost like fig preserves. It's approachable enough for someone who normally drinks bourbon, but complex enough to impress a single malt purist. And here is the kicker. It typically retails for under $30. That's an absurd amount of quality for the money. If you want to start an argument at your next whiskey tasting, pour this blind and ask people to guess the country. Nobody will say South Africa. Before we get to the top 7, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now telling me what country you are from and what is your favorite whiskey. I am genuinely curious what the world is drinking. All right, let's keep going. Number 7, Mackmyra Brooks Whiskey from Sweden. Sweden has quietly become one of the most innovative whiskey-producing nations on the planet, and Mackmyra is leading the charge. Founded in 1999, Mackmyra was the first Swedish whiskey distillery, and they have spent over 2 decades proving that Scandinavian whiskey is not a gimmick. Their Brooks whiskey, which translates to everyday whiskey, is their core expression, and it is anything but ordinary. Matured in a combination of ex-bourbon casks, ex-sherry casks, and Swedish oak, this whiskey has a flavour profile that bridges the gap between Highland Scotch and bourbon in the most satisfying way possible. The nose opens with orchard fruits, honey, and a hint of juniper. The palate gives you vanilla, pear, ginger spice, and a subtle herbal note that comes from the Swedish oak. The finish is medium length with lingering citrus and gentle warmth. What sets Mackmyra apart is their commitment to sustainability. They use renewable energy, locally sourced ingredients, and even mature some of their casks in an underground mine 50 meters below the surface. This is not just good whiskey, it is whiskey that is thinking about the future. Number 6, Lot Number 40 Single Copper Pot Still Rye from Canada. Canada has a long whiskey history, but much of it has been dominated by light, smooth, blended expressions designed for mixing. Lot Number 40 is the antidote. This is a bold, spicy, full-flavoured rye distilled in a single copper pot, still at the Hiram Walker Distillery in Windsor, Ontario. Where most Canadian whiskies whisper, this one speaks up. Dark toffee, cinnamon, clove, and baking chocolate hit your palate with real authority. The finish is long and warming, with a rye spice that rivals many high-end American ryes at a fraction of the cost. If you have written off Canadian whiskey as boring, this bottle will change your mind in one sip. It has a massive following in whiskey communities for good reason. People who discover it do not go back. Number 5. Penderyn Madeira Finnish Single Malt from Wales. Wales was the first country in the United Kingdom outside of Scotland to revive whiskey production. And Penderyn, founded in 2000, was the distillery that made it happen. Today, Wales has a growing whiskey scene with several distilleries, but Penderyn remains the flagship. They use a unique single copper pot still designed by Dr. David Faraday, a direct descendant of the legendary scientist Michael Faraday, that produces spirit at an industry-high 92% alcohol in a single distillation. Most distilleries need 2 or 3 runs. Penderyn does it in 1, and that gives their spirit a distinctive light, fruity character right off the still. The Madeira finish is their flagship expression. The whiskey is initially matured in former bourbon barrels, then finished in Madeira wine casks from Portugal. This finishing stage gives the whiskey its signature sweetness and complexity. You get tropical fruit, think mango and pineapple, layered with cream toffee, vanilla, and a delicate floral note. The Madeira influence adds dried fruit richness without overwhelming the delicate base spirit. The finish is clean, sweet, and dangerously drinkable. Penderyn has racked up over 100 gold and double gold medals internationally, and this bottle regularly retails for $40 to $50. For a whiskey with this much character and story, that is an absolute bargain. Number 4. Storning Floor-Malted Rye from Denmark. Denmark making world-class whiskey sounds like a joke until you taste Storning. This distillery does everything the old-fashioned way. They floor malt their own grain, which means they literally spread it across the floor of the malting house, turn it by hand, and dry it over a direct fire. almost nobody does this anymore. Even most Scottish distilleries have abandoned the practice because it is incredibly labour-intensive. Stauning did not care. They wanted to make whiskey the way it was made 200 years ago, except in a sleek, modern Danish facility designed with the same obsessive attention to detail you would expect from the country that gave the world minimalist furniture. Their floor-malted rye is a masterpiece. It is bold and spicy up front, black pepper, cinnamon bark, freshly baked rye bread, and then it softens into caramel, dried orange peel, and a whisper of smoke. The texture is almost oily, which gives it this incredible mouthfeel that coats your palate. Diageo invested $10 million in Stauning through their Accelerator Fund. Copenhagen's Noma, widely considered the best restaurant in the world, stocks exactly one whiskey brand. It is Stauning. This whiskey regularly appears on Best Rye in the World lists, and it is not there as a curiosity. It earns its spot. Number 3. Paul John Brilliant's single malt from India. India produces more whiskey by volume than any other country on earth, but most of it is blended grain spirit that would not technically qualify as whiskey under Scottish or European regulations. Paul John is different. Distilled in Goa from Indian barley, matured in ex-bourbon barrels in the tropical Indian heat, Paul John Brilliant's is a legitimate, internationally recognized single malt that has won gold medals at competitions where it was judged alongside the best from Scotland, Japan, and everywhere else. The tropical climate ages the spirit roughly 3 times faster than Scottish conditions. What you get is a whiskey that tastes like it has been in the cask for 12 to 15 years, when it has actually been maturing for 5 to 7. On the nose, tropical fruit, creamy vanilla, and a touch of milk chocolate. The palate delivers honey, ripe mango, butterscotch, and a gentle spice. The finish is long, warm, and incredibly smooth for the price point. And speaking of price, this typically retails for around $35 to $45. Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible scored this a 94 out of 100, calling it a superstar whiskey that gives us all a reason to live. That's not a typo. 94 for a $40 bottle from India. This is a bottle that converts skeptics. Pour it for someone who says Indian whiskey with a dismissive eye roll, and watch their face change after the first sip. Number 2. Starward Nova from Australia. If there is one bottle on this list that the whiskey community cannot stop talking about, it is this one. Starward is based in Melbourne, and their Nova expression is matured exclusively in Australian red wine barrels from the Barossa and Yarra valleys. That is not a finish. That is the entire maturation, and the result is a whiskey that tastes like a love letter to the Australian wine industry wrapped in single malt form. Red berries, dark chocolate, cinnamon, and a juicy mouthfeel make this one of the most approachable world whiskies you will find. It drinks beautifully neat, on the rocks, or in a cocktail. It is genuinely versatile. Melbourne's 4 seasons in a day climate creates rapid temperature fluctuations that push the spirit in and out of the wood aggressively. What you get is a whiskey with remarkable depth for its relatively young age. Diageo's Distill Ventures Fund backed Starward early, a massive vote of confidence from the biggest spirits company on earth. Whiskey Advocates scored it 88 points. It wins gold medals almost every time it enters a competition. And at around $40 to $50, it is one of the best value propositions in the entire whiskey world, period. If you only buy one bottle from this list, make it this one or the next one. And number 1, Kavalan Solist Vinho Barrique from Taiwan. This is the bottle that broke the whiskey world's brain. In 2015, Kavalan entered the World Whiskies Awards and walked away with the title of the world's best single malt whiskey. Not best Asian whiskey, not best new world whiskey. The best single malt on the entire planet. The Scotch industry lost its mind. Kavalan is located in Yilan County, Taiwan, a subtropical region with average temperatures that would make a Scottish warehouse manager faint. Those conditions mean the spirit matures at an almost reckless pace, with an angel share that is roughly 5 to 6 times higher than Scotland. But here is the trade-off. What stays in the barrel is incredibly concentrated and complex. The The Solist Vinho Barrique is aged in American oak barrels that previously held wine. And the result is unlike anything else in the whiskey world. The colour is a deep, almost mahogany red. The nose explodes with dark berries, plum cake, cocoa, and tropical flowers. The palate is enormous. Layers of blackberry jam, dark chocolate, espresso, toasted coconut, and a Christmas spice richness that builds and builds. The finish goes on forever. Tastings.com gave it 96 points. The Scotch Malt Whisky Society called it a Taste Master, the highest honour in their blind tasting. Jim Murray has publicly praised Kavalan's very rare talent. Every major whiskey competition on earth has thrown gold at this bottle. This is not a subtle whiskey. This whiskey grabs you by the collar and says, pay attention. You can still find bottles between $80 and $100 depending on the specific release. For a whiskey that humiliated distilleries 10 times its age, that is a generational bargain. Get it while it lasts, because the secret is very much out. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss the next one. I will see you there.